Welcome. Be sure to like and subscribe for more scary stories, or I will come for you. I'd like to thank Tim van der Linden for joining the Curator's Disciples and David Cassie for rejoining for a 5th month. Your viewership is very much appreciated. If anyone would like early access to my latest stories and an ad-free listening experience, consider becoming one of the Curator's Disciples. The link is in the description below. Without further ado, today's story, Trapped in Silence, by the Curator. I don't even know how to start this. I've never posted anything like this before. I guess I just feel like if I don't talk about it, I'll go insane. Maybe I already have. I don't really know anymore. My name's Lisa Monroe. I'm 32. I lived in a dump of an apartment in a town no one cares about. It's one of those dying industrial places where the factories shut down and never came back. And the only thing that seems to grow anymore is mold. If you've ever walked past a place and felt like it was rotting from the inside out, like the buildings themselves gave up a long time ago, that's where I was. I've been raising my little boy, Jack, pretty much alone since he was born. He's 4 now. I had him young, barely 28, and his dad bailed when he was still in diapers. No child support. No birthday cards. Not even a call. Just vanished one day. Probably shacked up with some other woman and started fresh. Bastard. So it was just me and Jack. And before anyone thinks it, no, I didn't hate being a mom. He was my whole world. That's not a cliche. That's real. Jack had the softest little laugh, like he couldn't believe anything in the world was bad. I held onto that laugh through everything. When the lights got cut off, when my paychecks bounced, when I had to warm him up with a space heater because the heat got shut off, his laugh kept me going. But being a mom in this world, especially alone, it wears you down. I worked double shifts at this greasy little diner on 3rd Street. We served overcooked eggs and coffee that tasted like battery acid. The place always smelled like fryer oil and despair. I'd pull 12-hour shifts, feet swollen, back aching, my name tag rubbing against my chest, and still I'd come home with just enough to cover rent and Jack's inhaler. Yeah, he's got asthma. Bad. I'd sit on the floor next to his bed with the nebulizer pressed against his face, singing quietly while he gasped for air. That was my life. And the debts, Jesus. They don't tell you how fast the interest racks up when you're desperate. I took a payday loan once, just one, and before I knew it, they had their claws in me. It felt like I was working just to feed them. I didn't have time for friends, or hobbies, or even proper sleep. Insomnia was my constant companion. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the cracked ceiling, listening to the fridge hum like it was trying to tell me something. Sometimes I'd imagine it whispering, "You'll never get out." One night, after another argument with my landlord about the leak in the ceiling and mold under the sink, I stayed late at the diner, just sitting in the break room long after my shift ended. That's when Crystal, one of the other waitresses, started talking about the dark web. She was kind of trashy, always high on something, but she had this gleam in her eye like she knew secrets. She told me she'd been getting her meds online, painkillers, anti-anxiety pills, that kind of stuff. Way cheaper than the pharmacy, she said. Doctors are just middlemen anyway. I was curious, not because I wanted to get high. I just wanted to stop feeling. Not forever, just For a night. One night where the weight wasn't pressing into my chest like a cinder block. One night where I didn't feel like I was breaking, cracking at the edges like a chipped plate. So, yeah, I started looking into it. Not right away. It took a couple weeks before I worked up the nerve. I borrowed a busted old laptop from the manager's office. He owed me anyway, and after Jack was asleep, I started digging. Forums, guides, tour tutorials. Most of it was confusing as hell, but eventually I figured out how to get in. It was like stepping into another world. People were selling everything. Guns, organs, hacking services, and drugs. So many drugs. Pages and pages of little avatars and usernames offering anything you could imagine. Most of it looked like a scam, but then I found a listing that stood out. Erythros, the Red Escape. Leave the weight of your world behind. The seller's name was Red Alchemist. His profile was slick, lots of glowing reviews. Changed my life. Never felt so at peace. One dose and all my problems disappeared. I clicked through the testimonials like they were gospel. A lot of them mentioned the price, cheap, considering how intense the high was supposed to be. And that's what hooked me. It was something I could afford. Just barely. I didn't tell anyone. Not that there was anyone to tell. I placed the order. I sent the Bitcoin, watched it disappear into the void, and waited. 3 days later, the package came. It was stuffed in my mailbox like junk mail, just a plain white envelope. Inside was a small vacuum-sealed pouch filled with this deep red powder, like powdered blood. No label, no instructions, just a folded slip of paper that said, "Welcome to freedom." I should have thrown it away. I know that now. I should have flushed it, burned it, screamed and cried and called someone. But I didn't. It was Saturday. Jack was asleep in his room, curled up with his stuffed dinosaur. I was sitting at the kitchen table, eviction notice on one side, Jack's prescriptions on the other, my hands trembling. I opened the pouch. Just a pinch, I told myself. Just enough to feel something good. I snorted a line, and my world shattered. The first thing I felt was heat. Not like a fever. Not like curling under a thick blanket on a winter morning or sipping a too-hot cup of chamomile tea. This heat wasn't comforting. It was alive. It pulsed against my skin like a second heartbeat, sinking in through my pores, coiling around my bones, whispering in a language I didn't understand. It was as if the molecules in the air had changed, thickened, softened, so that when I moved, the atmosphere folded around me like velvet soaked in sunlight. The heat wasn't just warm, it was intimate. My shitty kitchen, with its flickering overhead light and forever sticky linoleum floor, transformed before my eyes. The dull off-white walls shifted to a glowing gold, like they were bathed in candlelight from some unseen source. The burn marks on the stovetop shimmered like constellations. I blinked hard, but they stayed. The shapes pulsed faintly, like they were breathing in rhythm with me. The roaches, the ones I usually crushed under a napkin or trapped in a coffee mug, became something else entirely. Their movements were suddenly mesmerizing. Little dancers in a grotesque ballet, gliding and twirling along the baseboards, their oily bodies glinting like obsidian in a spotlight. I watched one climb the leg of the chair, and instead of revulsion, I felt awe, like I was witnessing something sacred, something divine. Even the mildew-streaked fridge, which usually wheezed and rattled like it was coughing up phlegm, now stood regal, majestic. Its dented door reflected the strange golden light, warping my face into something serene and alien. For one absurd, perfect moment, I thought it looked like a throne. And I laughed. Not a chuckle, not a tired huff of breath. This was something ancient and primal, a deep, belly-aching roar of laughter that clawed its way out of my chest like it had been locked in there for years. It curled up out of me until I couldn't breathe, until tears rolled down my face, and still I laughed. It was joy, but also grief, also release. 1,000 cracked pieces of me breaking apart all at once and turning into something new, something lighter. I forgot everything. The eviction notice duct-taped to the front door. The stack of unopened bills stacked like gravestones on the counter. The pain in my lower back from years of lifting, cleaning, surviving. The cold, gnawing ache that lived in my gut every time Jack asked for more food than I had to give. Even Jack himself. God, this still kills me to admit, but for those few glittering minutes, even the image of my son, his sweet little face, his soft voice saying "Mommy," even that slipped away like a dream I couldn't hold on to. I felt weightless, untethered, as though gravity itself had gotten bored with me and let go. I could feel the chair under me, but only distantly. The room swam, expanded, tilted. The air hummed with something. Energy, electricity, I don't know, but it buzzed under my skin, in my blood, in the tips of my teeth. I closed my eyes, and I flowed right through the ceiling, past the flaking plaster and the decaying roof, through the clouds and into some place far beyond anything I'd ever known. I saw stars. Not metaphorical ones. Real stars. I mean that. An entire ocean of them, stretching out into an endless cosmos. They swirled around me, glowing, pulsing, spiraling in elegant, impossible formations. And the colors there were colors that don't exist here. Hues that shimmered and changed every time I tried to look directly at them. Colors with no names. Colors that tasted like memory and smelled like childhood and rang like wind chimes in a thunderstorm. I think I heard music, but not in my ears. It was deeper than that. It played through me, in me, like my bones were strings and someone, something, was plucking them gently, rhythmically. The notes were impossible, familiar, and alien at once. The kind of sound that feels like it's always been there, hiding behind silence. If that sounds insane, I get it. I wouldn't believe me either, but it was real. Then, the stars went cold. No fade, no warning. 1 second, I was soaring through an infinite dream of light and sound and wonder. Then I was yanked back down so hard, it felt like my soul tore on the way down. I don't know how long I was out. The clock on the microwave blinked, said only an hour had passed, but it meant nothing. Time was shattered. Elastic. It could have been a lifetime or a single breath. What I do remember is the impact, the horrifying slam of re-entry, like getting hit by a train made of ice and iron. Pain exploded behind my eyes, white hot, blinding, like someone drove an ice pick straight into the center of my skull and twisted it until I screamed. My chair clattered backward, and I went with it, crashing to the floor as my body convulsed. Then the blood came. It gushed from my nose, not just a trickle, but a thick, hot stream that spilled over my lips, down my chin, splashing onto the cracked tile. I could taste it, copper and salt and something sharp like burnt metal. My hands, shaking and useless, slipped in the mess as I tried to crawl to the bathroom. Every inch felt like agony. My limbs didn't respond right. My fingers bent at the wrong angles, too slow, too far behind my brain. When I pulled myself up to the mirror, I almost didn't recognize the reflection staring back. My eyes were leaking red, not just tears, streams. Crimson lines ran down my cheeks like war paint, dripping off my jaw. My ears, too. The blood came slow, steady, thick as syrup. The skin beneath my eyes had sunken into deep hollows, turning a sickly purple black. I looked like I hadn't slept in years. My mouth hung open in a slack, twitching gape. I tried to speak, but my tongue, it felt like it belonged to someone else. Too big, too clumsy. The words got stuck and came out as broken syllables and gasps. My jaw spasmed, lips twitching without direction. Then everything went sideways. I don't remember the fall, just the sensation. Weightlessness, then a violent, jarring stop. A crash, a burst of white light that filled my head. Then came the static. Not noise, sensation. I was inside a broken television set. My thoughts flickered like half-formed images. Jack's face, his tiny chest rising and falling, the sound of him laughing. My mother's voice, humming lullabies from a decade ago. Then nothing, then screams, then more silence. I couldn't move, couldn't scream, couldn't even think. I was locked in, a body without control, a mind without anchor. Then, a flicker. My eyes opened, just barely. I was on the couch. The TV was off. The apartment was dark. The only light came from the hallway, where the door was cracked just a sliver. The air reeked, a mix of metal, sweat, blood, and vomit. I was soaked in it. My body was limp, a ruined puppet. Then I saw him, Jack. He stood next to me, small and terrified, tugging on my sleeve with trembling fingers. "Mommy." His voice was tiny, shaky. I wanted to respond, to reach for him, to wrap him up and say it was okay, but I couldn't. My mouth barely moved. Maybe I blinked. Maybe I didn't. He tugged harder, desperation rising in his throat. "Mommy, wake up." He touched my face. Then he screamed. It was a sound I'll never forget. Raw, shattering. A pure, primal terror that no child should ever have to feel. He wasn't just afraid, he was breaking. Screaming because he didn't understand, because the one person who always fixed things was broken in front of him and couldn't respond. He bolted, straight out the front door, barefoot, still crying, screaming for help. That boy, he's smart, brave. He knew something was wrong, and he didn't freeze. He ran. Mr. Haskins, the cranky old man across the hall, who always complained about Jack being too loud, was the one who called 911. I don't know what he saw when he looked inside, but I think he assumed overdose. Which, yeah, maybe he was right. The paramedics came. I heard bits and pieces as if underwater. No pulse. "Wait, we got something. Get her on the gurney. Now." I remember flashing lights. I remember Jack's voice, sobbing. Cold latex hands pressing on my skin. A needle sliding into my arm. Then, nothing. I woke up in a hospital bed. Not the normal kind of waking up. More like clawing my way out of a thick, drowning fog. Like I'd been buried under ice and tar, and someone was peeling me out, inch by inch. My awareness came back in pieces, disjointed and slow, like a broken film reel sputtering to life. My body wasn't mine anymore. It felt like a suit I'd been stuffed into, limbs full of wet sand, nerves muted like they'd been smothered under thick blankets. I couldn't move, couldn't even twitch a finger, couldn't blink, couldn't scream. My eyelids stayed glued open in a dry, half-lidded stare, the overhead fluorescent lights burning down into my pupils like judgment from some cruel god. Sounds filtered in like static through a blown speaker. A nurse's voice floated by, speaking gently to someone else in the room. Beeping machines droned like background noise in a dream I couldn't wake from. I heard muffled crying, close enough to touch, but a lifetime away from me. Someone grieving, maybe over me. I was floating, suspended in this useless, broken husk of flesh, aware enough to understand that I was helpless. Then, clearer than anything else, I heard a man's voice near my head. Cold, clinical, detached. She's awake, but unresponsive. Frontal cortex shows severe damage. We don't know how much of her is still in there. His words didn't hit like a punch. They hit like drowning. Like being pinned under glass while the world debated whether I was worth pulling out. Another voice, softer, maybe younger, responded in a low, pitying tone. It's like someone flipped all the lights off in her head, except for a dim one in the back. And just like that, I knew. I was trapped. I was still in there, screaming silently in a body that wouldn't obey. The days, or weeks, I don't even know anymore, blurred together like smeared paint. I had no clocks, no sunrises, only the constant churn of time marked by pills crushed into pudding, the humming of the machines, and strangers touching me like I was a piece of furniture. Eventually, they transferred me to a long-term care facility. That's what they called it. To me, it felt more like exile. It smelled like bleach and old plastic, like dried sweat and rotting dreams. There was no color there. The walls were this sickly, institutional green, like the inside of a dying plant. The lights buzzed overhead in an endless loop, their flickering rhythm carving time into my skull. Nurses came in shifts, faceless and perfunctory. Some were kind. They spoke to me like I could understand, held my hand during sponge baths, called me sweet names like hun or baby. Others weren't. They moved my limbs like they were repositioning a mannequin. They fed me like I was a dog with no teeth. One woman called me deadweight under her breath, not realizing I could still hear. I wanted to scream. I wanted to move. I wanted to exist. But all I could do was stare. All I could do was be. And inside I was unraveling. My thoughts came slower, fuzzier. Words floated out of reach. Whole sentences slipped through cracks in my mind before I could form them. I tried to remember my mother's face once, just to anchor myself. But it blurred and distorted, like I was trying to recall someone else's dream. Then Jack. God. One day, I realized I couldn't remember the way he laughed. I couldn't recall the exact pitch of his voice when he called me mommy. I couldn't even remember the last thing I said to him. That memory, whatever it was, had dissolved, gone like ash in the wind. Eventually, his birthday slipped away too. I knew it mattered, but the date floated in my brain like a phantom. I couldn't grab it, couldn't feel it. The only thing I knew for sure was that there used to be more of me. And now, there wasn't. I think I cried once. Not the way people normally cry. Just this strange internal ache, like a pulse in my soul. I felt it behind my eyes, pressure building, like something wanted to break free. But no one noticed. Sometimes, if the nurses remembered, they'd wheel me to a corner room with a window. That window became my lifeline. My tether. I'd stare through it for hours, watching shadows shift along the tile floor as sunlight moved. Birds landed on the railing sometimes. Leaves rustled. Clouds passed. That tiny glimpse of the outside world reminded me that time still existed, even if I didn't. And once a month, exactly once, they brought Jack in. He came with a social worker, always hesitant, always holding her hand like it was a lifeline. His shoes would squeak on the linoleum. He never looked at me right away. When he finally did, his face was pale, blank, searching for something he didn't find. He never called me Mom. He didn't smile, didn't reach for me. The first time, he stared for a long while, then whispered to the woman beside him, "That's not her." And he was right. Not the way he meant, but he was right. I wanted to cry out, to beg him to see me, to tell him I was in here, drowned, muted, but still here. But my mouth didn't move. My eyes stayed dry. My body betrayed me in every way it could. After a few visits, he stopped coming. I don't blame him. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, in a digital corner of the internet that authorities never touch, someone typed a message on a hidden forum. Batch 43 delivered, no review posted. Assume successful. That someone was Red Alchemist. To him, I wasn't Lisa. I wasn't a mother or a person. I was a delivery, a statistic, a username attached to an order. He didn't pause to wonder what happened to the woman who'd never posted a review. He didn't need to. He didn't care about what happened to me. No one did. Back in the facility, they say you can't miss what you don't remember. But that's a lie. I couldn't remember the sound of Jack's giggle when I spun him in circles. But I missed it so badly it made my chest ache. I couldn't remember the color of my old bedroom walls. But I missed the way the morning light used to pour in, warm and golden. I couldn't even remember how my ex-husband looked the day he walked out. But I missed the hollow space he left behind. Missed the sting like an old scar reopen. And late at night, when the lights dimmed and the sterile hallways went quiet, something would crawl up inside me. Something black and cold and choking. It pressed behind my ribs, nested there like it belonged. That's what I became. A shell. A whisper of a person. Kept alive by machines. Haunted by memories I couldn't quite touch. And every time I heard the hum of the ivy drip or the shuffle of nurses outside my door, I hoped, just for a second, that maybe someone would come in, not to feed me, not to bathe me, but to see me, to remember that I had once been alive, once been me. I can't tell you how long I've been like this. Time doesn't really work the same when your body is still alive, but your mind isn't. There are no days or nights, not really. Just stretches of dim hospital lights, the hum of machines, and the occasional sound of soft-soled shoes crossing linoleum floors. The first few weeks, or maybe it was months, all I could do was feel. I couldn't speak, couldn't move, couldn't scream, but I could feel everything. The tube down my throat, the crust of dried blood still lingering in the corners of my nose and eyes, my muscles aching from being in the same position for too long, the sting of a catheter, the dull, constant pain at the base of my skull that flared when someone tried to move me. And worst of all, the absence, the gaping hole where my mind used to be. When the news finally found me, they kept a TV running in the corner of the long-term care ward, muted most of the time. Just bright colors flashing across a dusty screen, looping headlines about politics, celebrity nonsense, or local events. A week before Halloween, something stopped the nurse in her tracks. She turned up the volume, and that's when I saw it. A woman reporter stood on the cracked sidewalk in front of my apartment building, 302 Lansfield Drive. She wore a bright red coat and had that same polished look they all have. Styled hair, flawless makeup, teeth too white. But the building behind her looked haunted, like it hadn't just been condemned, but witnessed something. It looked like a crime scene, and I guess it was. The news Kieran read: mysterious drug erythros may be tied to neurological outbreak in Rust Belt towns. The words barely registered, but the image of my window, my balcony with the busted railing, the peeling paint on the second floor that tore something open inside me. The reporter was calm, too calm, like they always are. We've now confirmed that 4 separate incidents in the past 3 months have been tied to the same unidentified substance, she said. Victims were all found unresponsive, exhibiting extreme neurological trauma. One source described the brain tissue as looking like it had been microwaved. There was a pause. B-roll played of gurneys, flickering red and blue lights, and neighbors being interviewed in front of their doors. One old man said, "That poor girl lived upstairs, had a little boy. She worked nights, I think. Real quiet." Another woman said, "She was always nice. I'd see her carrying groceries and still smile, even when it looked like the weight of the world was on her shoulders." They were talking about me. I was someone's segment, a name not mentioned, but understood, a face not shown, but known. The nurse sighed and changed the channel before the report ended. I couldn't do anything. I wanted to scream, "No! Put it back. Let me hear what happened to me." But I just sat there, staring, unmoving. The window reflected my eyes in the dark, wide open, wet, empty. He must have been around 5 by then, a little taller, his hair a bit longer, falling into his eyes. It was early spring, I think. The cherry blossoms outside had started to open, and the sun poured through the blinds in strips. They rolled him in, my baby, the only light I had. He looked nervous. He kept glancing at the nurse, who escorted him in, like he wasn't sure if he should be there. He clutched something in his little hands, a photo folded and smudged at the corners. When he sat beside me, he didn't speak for a long time. He just looked at me, like he was waiting for me to snap out of it, like it was a test. I watched him, every flicker of his expression. His cheeks had thinned out. He looked older, even though it hadn't been that long. Finally, he spoke. "They said you're still alive," he whispered, voice trembling. "But you're not really here." He looked down at the photo, unfolded it with shaking fingers. It was that old picture from his 3rd birthday, me holding him, both of us laughing, icing smeared across his face. He looked so happy in it. I looked happy in it, like I hadn't yet realized how heavy the world could be. "I keep this with me," he said, still staring at the image, "so I don't forget." My fingers didn't twitch, my mouth didn't move, but inside I was breaking. Every word he said was a knife slicing me into ribbons. "I live with Miss Tilda now," he said. "She has a cat named Echo. She makes soup on Sundays, and she smells like cinnamon and flowers. She's nice. She hugs me when I have the nightmares." He finally looked up. "But I still miss you, every night." Then he stood. "I don't think I can visit anymore," he said. "They said I could come back if I want to." But it hurts. Too much. He placed the photo in my lap, like he was giving me something sacred. Then he walked away. Didn't look back. Just walked out. And that was the last time I saw my son. Somewhere far from where I lay, miles away on a server bouncing through proxies across continents, Red Alchemist was free. He was alive, well-fed, working. No one mentioned me, or Jack, or the 6 others who followed after me. We were just echoes, quiet stories whispered by broken families, warning signs ignored. And the chemist? He just kept mixing his poison. I sit in a wheelchair now, pushed to the window at the same time every day. It's the only routine I have left. Sometimes I see a child run by, and for a second I think it's Jack. But they're always just strangers. A little girl with a pink balloon, a boy with a backpack skipping stones. I feel the warmth of sunlight on my face. I hear the soft rustle of tree branches, the buzz of cicadas in the summer, the crunch of snow in winter. Nurses walk by and talk around me like I'm a piece of furniture. Once, one of them leaned over and whispered, "God, I hope I never end up like her." Another replied, "Sometimes I think she knows. Like something's still in there." I do know. I feel everything. I just can't reach the surface. I'm buried alive in myself. A breathing tombstone. So please, if you're hearing this story now, if it was sent in, read aloud, posted to Reddit, or whispered on a forum in the dead of night, I'm begging you, don't go looking for it. Don't try to find Erythros. Don't let the desperation get louder than your common sense, because it doesn't just kill you. It hollows you. It takes you, and it leaves the body behind, still blinking, still breathing, just empty. A vacant apartment with the lights still on. Please, don't open that door. This is the Curator. I hope you've enjoyed today's scary story. Until next time.